I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Northwestern Wisconsin Senator Janet Bewley is moving into a leadership position in the state Senate. We'll talk with Senator Bewley about her 2017 legislative agenda.
Race relations are at a crossroads in the United States. Tonight we'll talk with the incoming president of the Duluth chapter of the NAACP and Duluth's human rights officer.
And there is plenty of important news in the week's business headlines.
These stories and more coming up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. Julie, a real blast of Arctic air is headed our way this weekend.
And the snow is already here.
It's here now.
Yeah, pretty treacherous out there.
So we're having a taste of winter in the next couple of days.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we're going to start thinking some warmer thoughts. It's all up to you here to get started.
All right, thank you, Denny, and welcome everyone. Wisconsin Senate District 25 is the largest in the state, spanning from Superior through Ashland to Hurley in the east and all the way to Rice Lake in the south. That is plenty of ground to cover for the senator that represents the district, who recently was elected to a leadership position. Joining us is Senator Janet Bewley, a Democrat from Ashland, who is the new Assistant Minority Leader in the Senate. And Senator, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm afraid I brought the snow.
Well, we do appreciate you driving through some pretty treacherous conditions
it's wonderful
to be here tonight.
Thank you.
Talk about your new leadership position a little bit and how this can benefit the people of Northwest Wisconsin.
Well, I'm Assistant Minority Leader, and that means I'm the Assistant Leader along with Senator Jen Schilling of the Democratic Caucus in the Senate. Now, we are in the minority, but each senator represents the same number of people, so we all have the same level of legitimacy, if you will, in the Senate. And of course, we represent the minority voice, the voice of people in our district. And as Assistant Minority Leader, I get to bring what I think is a very important rural perspective to Madison. Usually leadership is from the southern part of the state, Madison or Milwaukee. Since I represent a northern district and the largest district in the state, I hope to bring that very important rural perspective to the caucus and then subsequently to the floor.
So, Senator, what pressing issues do you hope to work on down in Madison this year?
Well, I want to make sure that my colleagues in the Senate realize that one size does not fit all. If you have a problem and you propose a bill with solutions, it must also work in rural areas and not just in urban areas. If, for example, you are going to be doing something, as I was doing this morning or earlier today, with the opioid task force, and it's going to propose solutions for treatment, we have to make sure that there's treatment available in northern areas and not just in the urban centers. And usually rural areas have a harder time with infrastructure, with broadband, cell phone coverage, rural emergency services. It's all very different in the rural area, and we have to make sure our solutions match those circumstances.
Have you found that your part of the state has been largely ignored by Madison in the past?
Well, you know, it's certainly been left behind as resources decline and the amount of revenue we take in and the services that we can provide in outlying areas to the state. Rural areas are underrepresented. The transportation budget, as you know, is one that is challenged in our state, and the amount of funds that can be returned to counties to maintain county roads and town roads is just inadequate. It's just inadequate. yet we see a great deal of construction going on, much needed, by the way, in Milwaukee or the new bridge to Minnesota. These are important, but it doesn't mean that we do these important things at the expense of rural roads.
Senator, tell us about the Better Building Superior referendum. What does it do? What does it accomplish?
What it does, it enables the community of Superior to designate itself as a special zone called an exhibition district. Now, if you go to Milwaukee and you know that Milwaukee has the new Bucks Arena, part of the financing for the arena comes about from the revenue that is created via the exhibition district and the sales tax that you can put on hotel bills, on taxi fares, on food and beverages within the district that can help pay for the financing of the Bucks Arena. A similar kind of district could be created in Superior, and there would be allowed to be a 0.5% sales tax that could be used to pay the debt on whatever it is that the Better Superiors project would build.
The referendum did pass overwhelmingly.
It did.
Do you see some of this being, is this motivation where it can be worked on soon?
Well, it certainly demonstrates that there is the will of the people in Douglas County to have this ability. But we do need legislation. We need what's called enabling legislation that gives the power to a unit of government to create this exhibition district and then therefore have a tax. Right now, that authority does not exist.
There's still work to be done.
Right.
Senator, you mentioned transportation funding, and of course roads and bridges in your district took a big hit last year with storms. What is the funding situation and the scheduling for getting everything back the way it needs to be?
We are pretty much back.
Are you?
All the roads are open with very, very, very small exceptions. We know that in some cases we have to go back and do it right. In some cases there was just repairs made that we need to go back and put the right size culvert in or do the right kind of road work. Where we are really hurting is the marina in Saxon Harbor. That was obliterated, and the typical transportation money will not go to that. That is managed by the town, a very small town of Saxon Harbor. We are trying to get federal money, and we're going to do all we can to make sure that that beautiful harbor can be put back into the condition that it was before.
Senator, what still needs to be done? What tools need to be developed to foster economic growth in your wide Senate district?
Well, I think that what we need to do is to make sure that people understand that Wisconsin should have the infrastructure border to border, from north to south, a certain level it should be there. And that means roads, broadband, cell phone coverage, and good schools. The way things are funded right now, in my opinion, rural districts get short shrift. And businesses certainly aren't going to want to invest in areas where they know that they traditionally do not get the funding and cannot provide the resources that a business would need.
I've heard you say schools have taken a hit.
They have indeed. And when people move and when employees are asked to follow an employer, one of the first things those families ask is, how are the schools? How well are they funded? Do they have all the teachers they need?
Do we need a raise in taxes?
We certainly need a way to fund our schools fairly. And there have been proposals put in place that could pretty much use the resources that we have. One of the things that has been an enormous drain on our education budget is the expansion of vouchers, for people to use vouchers. And that money is money that is shifted away from public education and given to people so that they can go to private school. I think that that's not a good use of public money.
Does it concern you at all that President-elect Trump's pick for the education secretary is in favor of school choice and the use of vouchers on a more widespread basis?
Of course it does. The nominee had never attended public school. I think that if you want to have someone try to provide for the people of America a quality public education, you need to have somebody who has participated in that and has some experience of that at some level, and she has none. I think that Right now, the federal government has limited financial input into the public education in our school, but they do provide certain mandates of what needs to be done, particularly for people with for students with special needs. And I would hate to see vouchers for special needs. We have worked so hard to have special needs students integrated into the regular population and not isolated into special schools just for them. I find that very, very dangerous.
Wisconsin healthcare, are changes needed?
Definitely. One of the things that is most alarming to me is the lack of services for behavioral and addiction services in Douglas County. The Medicaid rate, the Medicaid reimbursement rate in Wisconsin is so much lower than that provided in Minnesota. It's hard to keep people practicing as a therapist or a counselor in Wisconsin when they know they can take one of 3 bridges across to wonderful Minnesota and get paid significantly more. We've got to make sure that Medicaid payments are going to be enough that people can come and have a successful practice and still provide quality care to people who need it so much. And we know how how difficult it is right now to get recovery, to get people into recovery who are addicted to opioids. And when you find someone who's ready to go to treatment, it's heartbreaking if you can't provide someone to give that service to them.
We have just a very short amount of time, but of course Wisconsin was pivotal in the presidential race. The outcome of the race, does it say anything to Democrats in your state in terms of how you need to speak or reframe your messaging?
Well, I'm certainly not going to speak or reframe my message the way Donald Trump does. So I think that what it did, it shows us that there are people who feel that they are not being heard. I always want to listen, and personally I'm going to do even more than ever to listen to people and make sure that everybody feels that their voice will be heard. I know now what it feels like to be in the minority. But I think that it's going to take a long time. We still don't have all of the data on exactly how many people, for example, voted for the first time in this election. Someone that hasn't voted for years and years, how many of them came and voted for Trump that just because he struck a nerve with them in some way? We need to know those things, and we do need to look seriously at what happened, why, and most of all, we need to make sure that that I, as a legislator, govern in the way that the people of my district deserve.
All right, and on that we have to let you go, but thank you so much, Senator, for coming in. Appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
Reservation gambling is about to be dealt some new cards in Red Cliff, Wisconsin. That courtesy of a compact signed by Governor Tommy Thompson and tribal leaders.
We're going to be looking at self-sufficiency, I believe, from now on. We don't have to be looking at the feds for doling out the bucks there. I mean, we make our own and employ the people.
The accord limits casino gambling to 4 types: blackjack, slot machines, pull tabs, and video poker.
A lot of the tribes wanted more than that. They wanted to go into roulette, go into poker, go into dice games, go into chemin de fer. And I said no. I said we're going to limit it and get started and digest what we have.
Gambling is big business at the Red Cliff Lanes and Bingo Center, and it's about to get bigger. 8 more blackjack tables and nearly 200 slot machines are on the way, along with hopes of cutting Red Cliff's 65% unemployment rate. Tommy Thompson just hopes Wisconsin gambling doesn't get out of control.
And I'm telling you, I feel like the little boy that's got his thumb in the dike. Everybody wants to go faster. Everybody wants all types of gambling right now. And I'm just asking the people of the state of Wisconsin to trust me. Let me review this. Let's go slow.
Well, more than 2 centuries ago, our nation was founded on the principle that all men are created equal. Yet as 2017 quickly approaches, the issue of inequality in the United States doesn't seem to be going away. Here in Duluth, local groups are working toward making our diversity a positive and campaigning for inclusivity to the benefit of all. And so here to talk about this idea is Stephan Witherspoon, incoming president of the Duluth chapter of the NAACP. And Carl Crawford is a vice president of the local NAACP and newly instated as Duluth's human rights officer. Thank you both gentlemen for being here tonight. And Stephan, as you step into this leadership position now of the NAACP, what are your biggest concerns?
Well, my biggest concerns right now would be, seeing more racial equity in our work sector and in the education system. We need to have more people of color that represent our community that are in our work sector. Mm-hmm. Our kids need to be able to be with somebody or look at somebody and say, hey, I can identify with that person and I want to aspire to be them. So, and among other things, food, access to healthy food. We need affordable housing and just to come together as a community.
Are we seeing changes to the better, slow in coming, or are changes actually taking place?
Well, I think changes are taking place, but we need to work closely with one another, with the city and with the DPD, and just make sure that we all communicate and model, a behavior that we can really just get along and be with each other and live with one another. Mm-hmm. We're all human beings.
Carl, so you have these 2 positions as first vice president of the NAACP and with the Human Rights Office. How do those 2 positions kind of dovetail together?
Thank you for asking that. It's very symbiotic the way those 2 work together. The goals are the same, and as our new president talked about here, it's about bringing community together. And human rights is very synonymous with civil rights, very, very close to equal rights. So the 2 actually ride along together. And if we're able to change one end of our community, we can change the other end, and both will help lead that situation.
Stephan, what made you interested in the position? Is this something that you've been considering a while or that you lobbied for? Or?
I'm born and raised in Duluth. My parents were here. My father was a Baptist minister. He had a restaurant, and he served the community. My mother's been an activist here for over 40 years. So we were born into this. And it was for, the servitude of people. And so, it's been my whole life, to really make sure that everybody counts and everybody has a voice. And that's why I wanted to become president, because I believe that everybody's important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Stephan, what new ideas can you bring to the table?
Well, I just want to really make sure that we're visible in the community and that we start having events and fundraisers that support NAACP. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure that our children have resources. We need cultural centers and we need people on the community that can support each other. And so, and especially for our youth, they need to see leadership role of professionals of all colors, and we need to come together. So I am optimistic, but I am very encouraged that us as a Duluth community can work together, and it could be, prosperous for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I understand that you were involved in the Cops, Kids, and Cars event. Speaking of events, talk about that and what that brings to our community and to children and to our police force, because it brings them all together.
Well, the former Chief Gordon Ramsay, we talked on the phone a few years back, and we're like, it would be nice to have an event where youth and families can come in our vehicles, and we could play ball games, and we could cook and just sit with one another. I said, well, let's do it. And so, we formed the Cops, Kids, and Cars. This year was our 4th annual, Those are two parts. And it just brings the community together and it humanizes people. It makes sure that, hey, these officers are here to protect and serve, and the community policing is a big aspect of that. And so it's a good thing, and we need to continue that.
Carl, in early August, you were installed as a human rights officer for the city of Duluth. What do you do in that job?
Well, it's amazing. I learn a lot every day in that job. And what I find out is exactly what we've been talking about today. How many ways people are dehumanized and how many ways we can give them back that being human, being seen. There is so many people in Duluth that actually see Duluth differently every day. And I'm learning the way that they see, and I'm learning the way that we interact as a city to help make things more positive when people interact with the city, even when they visit our city, to have a great experience. So what I do is always ask the question, I lead with the question, what does it mean to be human? What does that mean? What does that feel like? And then what does it mean to be invisible? And how do we bring that to light?
Is there a Human Rights Commission?
There is.
What does that body do?
What they do is they'll handle complaints, we'll work together, building a better Duluth. And I want to make sure that folks understand it's not a place just to lodge complaints. It's a place to educate, to have us come out and talk to the community and meet the needs of community. And as Stephan talked about, build opportunities for access to education, to employment, and other opportunities within our city.
So if people are having a problem, they can knock on your door?
Absolutely.
So currently we see a lot of tensions at national media between communities of color, law enforcement. It sounds like we might be really fortunate here in Duluth that we don't have those issues, or are they there but just not at the level that they are in other communities?
Well, I think this gentleman here has done a great job of being in front of that, as well as our new police chief, Mike Tuskin. They've worked together, they've talked together, they've broken down a lot of the stereotypes and myths that exist in bigger communities, where it's just hard for folks to get to know each other. So the Cops, Kids, and Cards event, it's police officers, it's fire trucks, and kids are getting to see them not as just officers, but as dads, as human beings, and they're making that connection.
Stephan, you mentioned really wanting to work on making sure that people of color have the same opportunities for jobs that that everyone does in the community. Where do you see most of the work needs to happen on that?
I think that the employers have to really start looking through a racial equity lens. They have to really look at their protocols and their practices and say, what can we do to hire more people of color, and what are we doing wrong, and how can we change it? I think within that process they can start bringing in the people of color and other people of other cultures to say, hey, let's have our work sector represent our community.
And you also talked about education. Dropout rates are high for a lot of our high school students, but particularly in the communities of color. How do you keep those kids in the classroom? What part of it is the responsibility of the school district and the community, and what part falls back on the family?
I think we all play a part, and one of the things we can do is look at our curriculum and look at ways that certain groups are represented and certain groups are completely absent. And as a child, if you go to class every day and you're not represented in the reading, in the math, or given examples that are tangible, you kind of lose interest. So we can definitely start there with curriculum and then build forward to building opportunities and access for kids to get a better education.
Stephan, what's your educational and professional background, which probably didn't hurt to help you get the position with the NAACP?
Well, I have my applied science degree in human services. I do specialize in chemical dependency as well, and my bachelor's in organizational behavior. And I was currently in my master's program for project management, but I might switch it to maybe law. Who knows? We'll see.
See what happens.
Very shortly, President Obama is going to be leaving office as the first black president. Is it disappointing to you at all that 8 years later we're still even talking about this?
Absolutely it is. We have far to go. But I want to make sure we understand that, President Obama has made great movements in moving us forward as a country. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our past president of the NAACP, Cloudy Washington, who was president for a very long time. that did amazing work with our community.
Stephan
So we
was
still
a
have
good,
steps to go.
Stephan was a good choice?
Great choice.
Okay. Gentlemen, we've got to run. Carl, Stephan, thank you so very much for sharing.
Thank you. Happy
Thank you.
holidays.
Thank you.
Time now for the business headlines from our friends at Business North. Twin Metals mineral leases near the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness will not be renewed by federal agencies unless overturned. The decision will have a devastating impact on mining copper, nickel, and other precious metals on the Mesabi Range, Twin Metals Minnesota said in response. Calling the BWCA a natural treasure, the Departments of Agriculture and Interior attributed their decision to public concern about potential water pollution. The agencies also began steps to withdraw key portions of the watershed from other new mineral permits. Twin Metals says its underground mine near Ely would employ hundreds of miners and plans to challenge the federal ruling in a lawsuit.
Well, South Shore Brewery has fired up the inaugural batch of craft beer at its new Washburn facility. Founded in Ashland in 1995, South Shore was Northwestern Wisconsin's first microbrewery and the state's seventh. The new Washburn plant features Lake Superior Tap House and includes a tasting room with a variety of South Shore beers on tap. The company intends to maintain its relationship with the Deepwater Grill in Ashland.
A deal is in the works for a state of Virginia company to purchase the remaining assets of Grand Rapids-based Magnetation. Citing liability concerns, the Itasca County Board at first declined to support the proposal, which still needs a court approval. The board's concerns have now been addressed, and ERP Iron Ore stands to become the buyer if the court agrees. U.S. Representative Rick Nolan applauded the potential deal, saying it will benefit vendors waiting on payments and other stakeholders. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
Now, if you have a comment on this week's show, give us a call. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And remember, the WDSE website is the place to look for the latest program listings, updates on your favorite shows, and news about coming station events. And Julie, some very cold temperatures predicted.
Yeah, so I might just stay inside and bake cookies and wrap gifts this weekend.
I'll be over to eat those cookies. For Julie and the crew at Almanac North, I'm Dennis Anderson. Stay warm. Good night, everybody, and be kind.